I hope you enjoyed that video clip showing proper measuring of ingredients. Just real quick, there are a couple things that weren't in that video clip that I'd like to add. And while I'm at it, hint, these are the correct answers. When we are measuring flour, you really need to be careful that you spoon it in. If you scoop with your cup, you're packing the flour in as you go. Because of how fluffy flour is, it will pack in and you'll end up with more flour than you actually need. Brown sugar, if you packed it in well, you can actually tip the cup over quickly and pull it off, and you're going to end up with a sandcastle shape of brown sugar left over. If it doesn't stay in its sandcastle shape, then it's too loose. And then the lady left off butter or margarine or shortening. All of these can come in a stick format, where you buy this stick of butter, it's got paper packaging on it, and the paper packaging has got lines on it. Each of these lines is 1 tablespoon, so 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, 3, etc. and so forth. So what you're going to do is find the correct line, and then just using a knife, cut the stick. And there you go. That's how you measure butter, margarine, or shortening. Shortening and butter can come in a tub, in which case you would then just have to spoon it out into a measuring cup and then level it off. Okay, the dreaded math time. Dun-dun. This isn't really that hard. All we're doing is we're going to multiply our measurements by 2 or divide our measurements by 2. If it's a recipe that we really, really like and we want to make more of it without having to measure everything twice, we're going to multiply by 2. That is going to then let us to measure once and still get double the amount of food. If it's something we're testing for the first time, we might want to half the recipe, divide it in half, so that we can test it with less ingredients used to see if we like it before we commit to making more. Okay. The biggest trick for this portion of the math is you need to make sure when you do your multiplication, we're going to have it in fractions, because if you remember, our measuring spoons and our measuring cups are fractions. They're not decimals, right? And then we have to make sure they're actually fractions that exist for the measuring equipment we have. If I have a 5/8 left over after I do my math, I don't have a 5/8 equipment anywhere. I'm not going to be able to measure that. So we're going to have to be careful and make sure we use the right measurements. On your paper, I'm going to talk you through a couple of the first steps and give you some tips for a couple others. But then it's going to be up to you to complete the rest of the math yourself. If you have any questions, you can ask me. That's totally fine. I'm willing to walk through it with you again if needed. Okay, recipe number 1. Make surprise eggs. Surprise eggs makes too much. It's a surprise. You haven't tried it yet. You don't know if you're going to like it, so you want to cut the recipe in half. If we're cutting it in half, for example, if I had a pie, I'm going to cut it in half. I'm literally going to cut it so that I can keep this portion and get rid of that one. That was a messy diagram. I apologize. So we're going to start by recognizing we're dividing by 2, all of our measurements. Our first one is we have 2 cups of oil. This is like vegetable oil. And I'm going to divide 2 in half. A little bit of math here. 2 over 2 is the same as 1. Or if I have 2 of these cups, if I put a handle on it, just look like a cup. And to divide in half, I'm just going to get rid of one of them, so I only have 1 cup left. Okay, your paper says number. It has a line, and it says unit, and it's got a line. What this means is I need you to tell me, hey, we've got 1, but what are we using? Is it tablespoons? Is it teaspoons? Is it cups? Is it pints? What is our unit of measure? Right here, it's cups. You can write the abbreviation or you can spell it out, your choice. Okay, not too hard, right? Not too hard. Let's do our next one. The next one is a little bit more tricky. So we have 3½ cups of sugar. There are a couple different ways to do this. One is more of a math way, thinking mathematically, and the other is a little bit more visual. Let's start with mathematical. I guess there's 3 different ways. So if we look at our 3½ cups of sugar, it's kind of hard to just divide this in half because it is a simplified fraction. What if I turn it into an improper fraction? Where I say, hey, these 3 full cups, I actually want to measure out in half cups. So I'm going to take my 2, and I'm going to multiply it by 3. So that'd be, hey, I've got 6 halves, but then I still have this 1 half left over. So 3 halves is the same as 7 halves, right? Now this is a little bit easier to deal with. I'm dividing 7 by 2. So 7 divided by 2. Okay, so we've got, let's see, if I times 2 by 3, I would end up with 6, and I have 1 left over, right? So I've got 3 what's? We're looking at half cups right now, because we're in the half. So I need 3 half cups, and then I have 1 remaining half cup, right? This 1 half cup needs to be divided in half as well. And this is where you can divide 1 half by 2, which, as far as fractions go, that's when we actually just multiply across. So 1 over on top, 2 multiplied by 2 is 4. So half of a half is a 1/4 cup. So I have 3 half cups plus 1/4 cup. Now this is just looking funky. I don't like improper fractions once I know what I've got. So 2 over 2 is 1. So I have 1 full cup plus 1 half a cup left over plus 1/4 of a cup. I can combine my half cup and my 1/4 cup, right? I said that there are 2 quarters that equal 1 half. So if 1 half equals 2 quarters plus 1/4, that equals 3/4 of a cup, right? Okay, 3/4 of a cup. Clear up here. For my sugar, it's asking me, what's my measure? 3/4 of a cup plus this 1 cup. Don't forget the 1 cup. So it's 1 3/4 of, I just told you the units, cups. Still, we didn't change cups. This is a purely mathematical way to do it. Or there is a little bit of an easier way, which is just visually looking at things a little bit. So we've got 3 and 1/2 cups of sugar. So there's me a 1 cup, 2 cup, 3 cups. And then if I draw it like this, does it look like a 1/2 cup? So if I want to say, hey, 1 for me, 1 for you, we've got 1 full cup there. And I need to cut this one in half. So half of it would come this way, half of it would come this way. So I'm got a 1/2 of a cup there. And then this one needs to be cut in half as well. So if we're looking at this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We only had 2 to begin with, so we're going to ignore this top side. And we're going to go, hey, 1/4 we're going to keep, and then 1/4 we're going to get rid of. And that one was 1/2. So now we've got 1 full cup, we got a 1/2 cup and a 1/4 cup, and now we just need to put these two together again. So if we're looking at our cup, we got our 1/2 cup plus a 1/4 cup that we add in. So we got 1, 2, 3 quarters here. So it's 1 3/4 cup. I get a lot of people that ask, can I just throw this into my calculator? Sure, you could throw it into your calculator, but it's going to give you a decimal. You'd have to then convert the decimal into fractions, because remember, our cups are measured in fractions, not decimals. Okay, for the rest of your measures, it's all pretty easy for recipe 1 until we get all the way down to the bottom one of recipe 1, where it says we have 1 1/3 cup of chopped nuts. The easiest trick for solving this one is the mathematical way where I turn this into an improper fraction. So I take my 3 and I multiply 1 by that and I go, okay, I have 3 thirds for our 1 plus 1/3 means that 1 1/3 cup equals 4/3. Okay. And then mathematically, if I'm dividing by 2, our 4 divided by 2 would be 2. And the question is 2 what's? What measuring equipment are we using? 2/3 cup would be our answer. A little bit of a visual for that is if I've got my cups. Got to keep my handles on my cups. And these are not full cups, these are my 1/3 cups. Right? I'm going to take one, get rid of one. I'm going to take one, and I'm going to get rid of one. So I have 2 of these 1/3 cups left, so 2/3 cup. I hope that makes sense. I have a tendency to confuse people when I explain this in person. Okay, that is just recipe number 1, where you're dividing all of them in half. For recipe number 2, this is best simple meatloaf. This is a family favorite. You love this, but it doesn't make as much as you want, which means we need to double it. That means for this whole recipe, we're going to multiply everything by 2. Let's walk through a couple of these. Starts off with 1.5 lb. What's lb? Pounds. Ground beef. We're going to multiply this by 2. You could do this purely mathematically, or you can think about it a little bit realistically. For this one, I'd probably take this shortcut and I'd go, hey, 1 multiplied by 2 is 2. Okay. 1/2 multiplied by 2 would be 2 halves, right? So that's 1 whole. So I'd say, hey, 1 plus 2 equals, I need 3 pounds of ground beef. The purely mathematical way is you could multiply this into an improper fraction, where I go, hey, 2 multiplied by 1 is 2, plus 1 means, hey, I need 3 halves. 3 halves. And I'm multiplying that by 2. And to multiply fractions, you go straight across. 3 multiplied by 2 is 6. 2 multiplied by 1 is, well, 2. And then this is a top-heavy fraction. So if we divide 6 by 2, it's 3. Simply put, it's 3. 3, and then pounds are our unit. There's lots of different ways to think about the math. For example, on our next one, gotta do a color we haven't done just yet. We're looking at 3/4 cup of oatmeal. It's not cooked, but I'm not writing that. We could do the purely mathematical one we just said, where we're multiplying by 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 1 is 4, so 6/4. We need to simplify our 6/4. And we can go, hey, 6 divided by 4. 4 can go into 6 once, with a remainder of 2. What do we have remaining? Quarters. So we have 1 and 2/4. This one can be reduced even more. Both of them can be divided by 2. So we end up with, we need 1.5 cups of oatmeal. Cups are a unit. That's our measurement. The visual method for doing this is you could draw this out every time, say, hey, this is a quarter, this is a 1/4 cup, and I've got 3 of them that my recipe needs. If I want to double this, I need another one for all the 3 that I did, right? So I end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 1/4 cups. And then it's just the matter of reduction again, where both of these can be divided by 2, which is 3 halves. And then that one is improper, and it could be changed into 1 and 1/2. Hopefully I've given you guys lots of different ways to think about this. As far as doubling your recipe in half, or dividing in half, the purely mathematical portion so far is pretty easy. All of our fractions have ended up as measurements that we can actually measure with our measuring equipment here. Please be careful. There are a couple where you could actually change that. For example, the last one in recipe 2. The last one in recipe 2 says we have 2 tablespoons of mustard we need, but we're multiplying by 2, right? 2 times 2 is 4 tablespoons. Wait, hold up, hold up. Is there an equivalent that this goes with? I seem to remember something about a 4. I could change this into a 1/4 cup that I measure. You're probably thinking, why would we do that? We have tablespoons, we can measure with tablespoons. The answer is, every time you measure, you could get a little bit more or a little bit less. For example, if this is my tablespoon, and my mustard's a little bit over, and I'm measuring this 4 times, right? In the end, I have all of this extra that could almost add up to 1 whole tablespoon extra on its own, right? Or if I was measuring slightly under, I would probably end up with under in the end. Every time you measure, you get a little bit less or a little bit more than what you actually want. It's hard to be very precise, which means if I took my 1/4 cup and I measured with it, even if I had a little bit more, it's not going to be as much as ultimately there would be if we're multiplying it by 4 or less. So keep your eye out, see if there are any other equivalents that could pop up. And make sure you are using the most reduced forms of your fractions. Please don't leave any improper fractions behind. If you have any questions on this, I will have a time during the week where you guys could come in and have a video chat where we just walk through this process and help you out some more. You can email me, whatever works best for you.